me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome to the show. It's Andrew Zimmel, your host as always. We're one day closer to sports. We're one day closer to sports, people. That is how I count down the days during quarantine. That's how I'm starting to count down the days during this virus. Thursday, we have our first real sporting events in forever, it feels like. Thursday, baseball starts back up. Thursday, basketball will start being played. We already have had soccer and those other kind of Olympic sports, I'm going to call them. Those have been going on for a little bit now. But when we talk about major professional sports, Thursday is the day. So I'm very excited. It's Tuesday. We only have 2 more sleeps, and we're there. People, we are there. We are on the doorstep of bringing sports back. So, a little bit of an update. Yesterday, we did our first live stream. Thank you to the guys that checked in. Check that out. It was tough, okay? I'm not going to lie. It wasn't a perfect situation, but it never is, okay? And we're going to get to why you need a little bit of practice in a second. But it never is a perfect first run. The Wright brothers didn't jump on pieces of wood and cloth, have a motor, and have that plane fly on the first try. No, it takes some time. So, we'll get there. So just keep checking in, keep listening. We'll get there. But the problem is if you don't have any practice, the product's not going to be as good. If I didn't practice doing these podcasts, if I didn't practice doing live shows in the past, then yesterday would have been an even bigger train wreck. And that's why when we look at the NFL, who have said now, no preseason games. They don't want to have preseason games, and Players Association said no preseason games. Honestly, any other year, I would be against this. Any other year, if it was last year, if it's next year, and they say, hey, we don't want to play any games before opening week, that's where I'm going to have some problems. Because those first 3-4 preseason weeks, players might hate it. But let me tell you that the owners like it. The front offices like it. Scouts and GMs like it because they get to see not only how have the players progressed since the draft, how have the players progressed since the Senior Bowl or the last big bowl game. They also get to see how they mesh together in a live action sequence. There's dudes who are competing for jobs. There's dudes who are competing for livelihoods. And when you put the money on the table, that's really when I think you get the best out of some of these guys. Does it need to be 4 weeks? Probably not. It probably needs to be 1 or 2. Okay, but I still think there needs to be a preseason. Okay, and the inter-squad scrimmages work, but we need to have at least 1 or 2 preseason games. This year, however, I understand where they're coming from. The coronavirus, you want as little interaction with other teams as possible. You want to have as much testing as possible. So if they say to themselves, if they say to the players, hey, you know what, we're not going to have a preseason, but all that means is that you guys have to stay in this bubble a little bit longer, I think that players would agree with that. We talked about it yesterday, all different players' tweets saying that they wanted to play. So this is a right first step, I think. So no preseason games, which for fans, they probably weren't going to go anyway. Probably weren't going to get in anyway. But this is good for fans because they recently had like the poll, what's the worst game that you've ever seen? And everybody was talking about preseason games and how preseason games are some of the worst sporting events they've ever been at. I challenged them to go to 2 losing high school football games. If you go to 2 teams who have a losing record, there's a reason they have a losing record. Those games, they're not good. All right, so on the docket, I'm talking a little bit about the pro football rankings. Way too early predictions, in my opinion. We mentioned yesterday that Kanye West was going off the rails. Yesterday, he really doubled down, or last night, he really doubled down. And, of course, I'm going to bag on some college football writers because for some reason, just because you cover higher education's football teams doesn't mean that you use your brain all the time. So let's talk about the pro football ratings. So I agreed with most of these. I'm not going to read you off 1 through 32. You can kind of guess the bottom 5, bottom 7, because it's not difficult. But I'll give you the first 10, okay? They had Chiefs at 1, 49ers at 2. Makes sense. Defending AFC and NFC champions. Ravens at 3, Patriots at 4. Okay, get a little spicy. Saints at 5, Bucks at 6, Hawks at 7, Titans at 8, Bills at 9, Eagles at 10. All right, let's break this down. So, I like what they did at the beginning. I like the respect they gave the Chiefs and 49ers. Personally, I think the 49ers probably don't need that much respect. Personally, I have seen teams that had really good one-year runs fall off. The 49ers are now infamous for being the team that could go play in 4 NFC Championship games and only play in 1 Super Bowl. So I'm not entirely convinced, I should say, that the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan are that team. Garoppolo's good. Shanahan's a pretty good coach. But Rich Sherman's a year older. That secondary got torn up. I thought they kind of got exposed in the Super Bowl for what they could and couldn't do. Nick Bosa is a monster. Okay, you might not like him, might not agree with his politics, but the dude is a beast. Okay, and there's enough guys on that defensive line that make me say I can be okay with them being at 2. But Garoppolo needs to take a step forward. I still don't think they have any real deep threats. So them at 2 kind of feels spicy. It feels like for an average fan, I think an average NFL fan would say, okay, that makes sense. But I think for the majority of us that watch football consistently, the majority of us that cover football consistently, 49ers at 2 kind of feels a little high. Ravens at 3, another team that I think lay fans would say too high. I think the guys that just watched Lamar in the playoffs are probably scratching their head, thinking, okay, well, he was a cheat code during the regular season, but the minute that you give a team time to prepare for him, give him a year's worth of tape, he crumbles under pressure. Well, the first year he was in the playoffs, he didn't play every game. This is his first playoff matchup. He's like a 21, 22-year-old kid. Okay, I get it. It makes sense. You're going to struggle. I don't think there's a quarterback in NFL history who comes in at 22 and takes over a team halfway through the season and wins more than a quarter of a playoff game. I just don't think that it's a real expectation. Last year, playing the Titans. Titans just shut down Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time. Josh McDaniels, one of the best OCs of all time. And a pretty good Patriots offense. Like 4 weeks prior, the Patriots were being talked about as the team that was going to win the entire thing. Titans come into New England, shut them down, run the ball down their throat. Then they go to Baltimore and do the same thing. This isn't crazy. This isn't rocket science. There's real momentum to these NFL teams. If you've watched the NFL, your team has gotten momentum. You've seen other teams have momentum. This isn't new. You knew this. I don't blame Lamar as much as I think other people would for those 2 playoff losses. So putting the Ravens at 3, you're really saying to me, you're saying, hey, listen, Ravens are going to be as good or better than they were last year. They're going to face the Chiefs in the NFC Championship game. And Patrick Mahomes is going to do Patrick Mahomes stuff. The only team right now that I 1,000% agree with is the Chiefs. Because that team was raw 2 years ago. They're raw now. And Patrick Mahomes just signed a huge deal. And the first video we got, it felt like James Harrison. Like, it's a hard comparison to make because 2 different positions, 2 different ages, stuff like that. But this felt like a James Harrison move when he signed that contract. And the first thing we saw was him practicing. That is a textbook, old school football thing to do. So I like that. Patriots at 4. Okay. This is tough for me because Tom Brady, very good quarterback, even at 40. We're going to get to his team in a second. Very good quarterback at 40. He wasn't able to do anything with the Patriots. Why were we putting them at 4 with Cam Newton? I love Cam. I like them, but I think that was a little bit too high. Saints at 5. Okay, this is one I'm going to disagree with vehemently because the Saints they play in a tough division. The NFC South is not a cakewalk. They're going to have to be in shootouts every single game. The defense never gets a chance to get off the field. Drew Brees is a year older. Michael Thomas was rated the best wide receiver in football this year in the preseason. I don't think that DeAndre Hopkins or Julio Jones would agree with that at all. I don't agree with it. I think the Saints have been a team that has been overrated year in and year out because of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. But I remind you, and I bring this up all the time, if you take away that one Super Bowl that they won, and you could do this with anybody, but you take away that one Super Bowl that they won over a decade ago, their playoff record does not look as good. Their regular season record does not look as good. So, you get good against the Colts. Congratulations. City deserves a championship. What have you done for me lately? Saints haven't done enough. Bucks at 6. Okay, this is the one where the hype is too real. Tom Brady, Gronkowski, they come in. I get it. Mike Evans is good. I get it. Chris Godwin is good. But that defense wasn't great last year. This is a team that won 6 games. I don't like them at number 6. I think that that's too high. Seahawks at 7. Okay, this one, a little low. Could have put them a little bit higher, I think. Put them right around where the Saints were. Russell Wilson never won a MVP. He is the only quarterback who is a Super Bowl champion, who has done the crazy athletic things that he's done, carried a franchise on his back, and not been an MVP. So this is the year, I think, for him to win the MVP. The narrative's behind him. If the Seahawks can win 10 games, 11 games, I think that he's the guy who we put in the MVP conversation very early on, and it carries him through the season. So I like Russell. I like the Seahawks. That's a pretty good defense. I think they need to be a little bit higher. Titans at 8. All right. Derrick Henry. I get it. The defense. I get it. That's probably a pretty good spot for him. Bills at 9. Stephon Diggs. He joins the team. Pretty good defense. I like him at 9. And Eagles at 10. All right. So this is the team that Pro Football Focus thinks is going to win the NFC East. Because right now it is a deadlock between the Eagles and the Cowboys to me. I think that if you split those 2 games between the 2 teams, the home and home, I think that whatever team gets to 9 wins first is probably going to win the division. All right, neither one of these teams gives me the vibes of they have it all together. They figured it out, and new head coach in Dallas. Eagles continue to kind of try to find their footing from being the team that won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. It gives me big vibes, big energy, and both these fan bases think that their team is much better than they actually are. And that, in point, is the problem. That's the problem right there, is you have unrealistic expectations. You do this to Eagles fans, you give them more of a chance, or you put them at 10 on some of these preseason rankings, and it's going to blow up their ego, it's going to blow up their head, and then when their team doesn't do what they think that they should be doing, you're going to get 4 more years of Carson Wentz talk about how he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. All right, shifting gears. We talked about Kanye West yesterday. I said to myself, well, that's the last time we're going to have to talk about Kanye for a while, but it's not. So last night, he goes on an incredible Twitter rampage, really throwing a lot of just crazy stuff up against the wall, seeing what sticks. He deleted some tweets this morning. I don't love that. But the point is, and I should have screenshotted these tweets, that's on me. Delete some tweets talking about how Shia LaBeouf stood him up for their Gap photo shoot. He talked about how Kim, his wife, and Kris Jenner wanted to put him in an institution for bipolar disorder, that they wanted to put him in a padded cell because of what he was saying about his daughter at his campaign rally 2 days ago. Kind of needs help. That's not a new take. That's not something that we're all just now coming to the realization about. Okay, we knew this for a long time, people, that Kanye West needed help. And he didn't get it. He either didn't get it, or the people around him are just yes men. And now we are seeing we're reaping what we sowed with Kanye. We didn't do enough to prevent this. I say we like I have anything to do with it. You didn't do enough to prevent this, people around him, and now we are seeing the collapse of Rome. We're seeing his mental state completely deteriorate. Where do we go from here? Well, I said that Kanye has been dealing with this for a long time. I said this a long time ago, that I thought that Kanye had fallen off. Life of Pablo was good. Ye wasn't. The Jesus is Walks album wasn't good. You look at Kids See Ghosts and Daytona. Both of those albums are very good, well produced, well put together. Now, Kanye was on Kids See Ghosts. It was a collaborative album between him and Kid Cudi. I think that Kid Cudi carries that album. I think that Kanye is kind of just there in a lot of ways. Daytona, Pusha T album. I think Kanye helps with the production. I think he helps with the song choices. I don't think that he's doing a ton of the heavy lifting on that album either. So if you told me, and I brought this up, and it was hard. Me and a friend were trying to conversate about this, and there's some sort of gap there. I was saying to him, I think that if you asked me about the last two Kanye albums versus the last two Kanye projects, because I think Kanye helped on both those projects, I would say that the Daytona and Kids See Ghosts are head and shoulders better than either of his solo deals, either of his solo projects. And I've brought this up countless times with people. I said, look, if you want to map the downfall of a star, you talk about when does their music start to suck and when are they better on other people's songs. Like Eminem, this is just an example. I said that when Eminem was better on other people's projects, when he was better on other people's songs, when he's getting featured and he's got really good feature verses, but he's not good on the song, he's not making good albums, that is when he starts falling off. 50 Cent's the same way. Put 50 Cent on a track with other people, he sounds really good. You give him, $50K for a verse, okay, good. He's there. He's doing it. You say to me, 50 Cent has a new album, I'm not as inclined to buy it. I'm not as inclined to listen to it because I know that the project's probably not going to be that good because he's kind of fallen off. So you hate to see it, and especially with the family stuff, you don't want to see a family get split up. They've got 4 kids. You want to see them have a father. But at the end of the day, this and the Gap thing got me too, because the Gap is a department store. It's a store famously for being in malls. Malls are shutting down. Okay, so you're telling me that you're going to a Gap store by itself? You're not going to a Gap store in a mall. You're going to a Gap store by itself. Or you're going to shop from the Gap online? No. Maybe people do that. I don't know any of them. I don't know a single person. This feels like a marriage built on very thin ice. Because the Gap could shut down at any point, and Kanye West could go off the deep end at any point. We are watching it's scary, but we potentially are watching the last days of a cognitive Kanye West. That the next time that he comes out in public, there's a real chance that after this entire episode's done, there's a real chance that next time he comes out in public, nobody will take him seriously. Hard to take somebody seriously, hard to buy clothes from a person who isn't being taken seriously. Because clothes, fashion, it's all popular opinion. So the minute that the popular opinion flips on you, you're kind of stuck. So this is the last thing. Got to talk about college football writers. So I'm scrolling through my timeline. I hope, this is what I hope. I'm hoping that somebody hears, I'm hoping that some of you listening are friends with college football writers. I'm hoping that some of you know exactly who I'm talking about here, because this is getting to be absurd. So the worst person to do this is Clay Travis, but there's other people who have done this too. This is a tweet. It's astonishing to see some sports media actively pushing negative narratives against football season in what appears to be for clicks. Okay. So it's talking about blog writers. It may work, but if football doesn't happen, clicks and sadly some jobs will subside. I can't be the only one that recognizes this, right? So this is right out of the Clay Travis playbook. This is what Clay Travis has been pushing, the shyster has been pushing from day one. That there are people in the media, there are people in sports media who are actively rooting against the football season coming back. Now, here's what I think is happening. This is just me thinking this is happening. I think that when you follow a bunch of people who cover the same sport as you, and a couple of them are more empathetic than you, a couple of them maybe care a little bit more about the athletes that they cover, care a little bit more about the college athletes than you do, those tweets that appear to look like they're rooting against the football season are actually rooting for the health and safety of the players. Okay? What is happening here is that there is a large group of NFL and college football writers who think that the season should go on no matter what. I think that's the majority of people. Is that if we have a vaccine, if we don't have a vaccine for the coronavirus, that we need to have a season, we need to start playing games immediately. Now, that is a wrong take. That's an opinion that I disagree with vehemently. If we don't have a vaccine, and you're an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, and we don't know the long-term effects of a virus that has killed 130,000 plus people, it's very hard for me to say to you, suit up, we got a game on Saturday. It's almost impossible for me to say that. I'm rooting for the football season. I want there to be a football season. The NBA having 0 coronavirus cases is an incredible step towards sports coming back. There's more reports saying that the majority of the teams in college football who have started testing are showing more and more players negative. That's a great step. That's a great first step to this season coming back, for the sport to come back. But if these numbers spike, say there's a third wave of this thing, say more people are dying, because they are, and you tell me we need to have a season no matter what, I'm sorry. I cannot sit here and say let's put people's lives at risk. It's just impossible for me to say. And maybe that some people can. Maybe some people, the checks matter. They do. I get it. You need to get the money. You need to pay your bills. That makes sense. I get it. But it's hard. It's very hard for me to say people need to die so that I can get paid. People need to die so I need to be entertained. Okay? Or people need to almost die. Need to get this virus. That's the other thing. And I'll leave you on this. Please, if you're somebody who says, oh, somebody under the age of 50, if they get this, they're going to be fine, they're not going to die, I need you to look in the mirror and tell yourself, dying is terrible. That's the worst case. But it's not black and white. There's not like it's you die and you don't die. There's a lot of gray area of suck in between the two. Okay? If I'm 18 and I get this thing, and maybe I'm just sick with the flu for like 2 or 3 days, that's something. But if it's a 2-week flu, because I've had friends who've had this, and they said it feels like a 2-week flu, they're in bed, they feel terrible, okay? If it's that, why would I want to get this? Why would I want to get this? You don't. All right, tonight, 5 to 6, YouTube, live, do another show. Probably going to hit on some of the bigger topics, probably going to go over those football ratings a little bit more. Check that out. Please continue to listen to this podcast and go read Dave Campbell's Football Magazine. I meant to plug this yesterday, but go read Dave Campbell's Football Magazine because it's the #1 magazine for Texas high school, college, and pro. Or I guess it would be, high school and college football in the state. I'm referenced in there. But that's not the only reason I'm plugging it, because this is a great magazine, and they do an incredible job over there. So, very excited for those guys. It's a great magazine again this year. Even if we're going to have a season, just got to put positive vibes out. We're going to have a season. Go pick up the magazine. All right, I'll talk to you guys tonight on YouTube, and I will see you guys, podcast listeners, tomorrow.